I'm here today to talk to you about getting the word out and trying to stop a process that started. I've had the pleasure of being involved with a few different projects that we were either to stop or we were able to scale them back by about 80% or not get funding, which right now the Columbia River crossing is stopped because it hasn't been able to get funding. And that's been really important, and the way it was done is by collaboration. And I had them hand out to you just now a snack. When I go to events, I go to a lot of places. I even have a tent most of the time in my car with signs. I have those sitting there in these little cups. And the people come over because they want to know what's there. They go through. They say they haven't had a good and plenty for years. They keep coming back. They pick up the data and the information. So one of the most important things you can do is have something that attracts them. And Sweet and Savory seems to do it. And if you're at an event all day long, people will come back to you. And then they'll bring other people. And something like that was like maybe $15 for this whole group. And I still have some left. The other thing I handed out was the Selling the Southwest Passage, which was a tour, which is different than the tour I'll be showing here. The Lombard survey, that was a change that the city came out and said that they were doing planning, and that the city had, that people had said it was going to be a specific way. And I was the North Portland Business Association a board member as well as the transportation chair for 4 years. And when they brought it out, I was like, are you kidding? Nobody wants this stuff. And they're like, oh, yeah, yeah. And somehow I was missing that the meetings were going on. And then they're like, oh, we were sure you would know, of all people, and these are the results. I'm like, you guys have lost your minds. So Jen Carlock and I made up this survey. And we went out and stood on the street corners. And I should say I've been in the area for about 27 years. So most people, if you huddle up next to them and say, hey, you know, can I stand in front of your business or here or there, they'll let you. And we went out to the street corners and we handed out this survey because they said that the people of St. John's and North Portland, they couldn't get anybody to show to any meetings because they weren't involved. Now, I got to tell you, North Portland, they're involved. They come out for everything. And I said, nobody knows. So when the surveys came back, we had about 300 and then about 450 that were 70 and 80% different than what the city had said. I started holding some meetings. And they said, well, if you can get 20 people here or 15 people here, you know, you've won. We spend all this money as the city. We had 150 people that showed up at the first one, 185 and 210 at the net, at the third one. And they were totally against it, and we had found out that the process was already closed and that they weren't going to change things. And so that didn't really stop people. That we sat down, wrote up what was wrong with it, started going to city council, and on St. Patrick's Day, they had us at city council for our thing. We got a bus, we got down there. We even had a lady that was an opera singer come and do Danny Boy. And we got them to scale things back, mainly because people came at it in a good and generous manner of, this isn't right, this isn't what we want. Why don't you just let us have what we want since we live there? And the other two is the line in the sand and where do we go from here, had to do with the mending of the community again so that they would all come back together. So a fair and honest process is what everybody is looking for. And not only do I want a fair and honest process, but I want the people around me to have a fair and honest process. I don't want to watch anybody being abused. I want to say this has been equal and fair dealings. And the wise man will always learn more from the fool than the fool can ever learn from the wise, is an ancient saying. It's very hard to look at everybody that comes, especially when you have odd people sometimes that are attracted to issues, as gems. But you will be amazed at what they'll bring forward and what they will do that you never thought of. Or all of a sudden they'll just have the courage to contact somebody, or they'll go someplace and hear something that's unique. And so getting the government to follow the process means you have to know it a little bit and simplify it. It's actually very easy. They need to come to your community, ask you your problem statement, a purpose and need statement, and then they are to ask you for a locally preferred alternative to take care of your problems. and they're supposed to have a range of alternatives thoroughly studied, and in many states equally. And so creating your own process really helps in that. Get yourself a little brand, get yourself a little logo, start making some signs and some things, and they have no idea how large or how small you are not. And by staying as close as you can to the subject, we are called the Green Tea Party. You want to see me stand up in a room and say, okay, if one more person brings up global warming, I'm kicking him out. Sticking to the subject was the hardest thing. But once people got there and they started realizing across the aisle that everybody wanted the same thing, and they started being friends with them. So we did think tanks, and the think tank was really important when they first got there. This lady was kind enough to open our house every Friday night for about 2 years ago. And the first thing she said was, okay, everybody, we're going to get on the same page and we're getting organized. I said, absolutely not. I said, the best thing here is that each of you can become an expert or a specialist in the field that you enjoy. And so what we had was we had people who, some liked light rail, some liked land use, some were against this, some wanted that. And we asked them to tell us when meetings were going on, what was going to happen at them, and then to come back each week and report. So what they did was, as they said, what was important, who were the players, when something was coming up again, and gave us a calendar of when we should go to things. And then we kind of said, okay, I can't go here. Can somebody go here or there? And we did that. Then when people would call our group, and we were called an expert, we would say, oh, we have an expert on that. Or we have somebody who is working on becoming an expert on that. And they would bring in people who were really interesting to speak to our group. And so that really worked as far as when we went to subjects and when we went to testify, we had one after another and after another. The Smarter Bridge Committee was formed, and they picked the name Smarter Bridge Committee because they thought the alternatives that they had were smarter and better. And the Smarter Bridge Committee was a vast array of very, very liberal green in the Oregon side, and far-right Republicans, several of them leaders on the other side. And they learned to love each other and enjoy each other, and many of them became good friends. But we then knew what was going on in both camps. And it's kind of like, they say, well, why be around the dissenter? Well, then you know if they've got the wrong information. If you're tolerant enough to hear what they have to say, then you know, oh, this is why they've gone off the deep end, or this is how they got here or there. And then you hear it all, and then you know what you agree with, so you don't have to go there. And then you can say, well, you know, I heard about that, but you know, the information I got's a little different. Could I share it with you? And then they back up and they say they never heard that kind of stuff. I'm a little out of line. I have a couple of videos to show for you. They are, one is the Smarter Bridge Committee. And the thing is I put on events all the time. And I should say, in college I took commercial foods, and I was a restaurant manager and different things. So putting on events to me is nothing. But they're very easy. A name tag, try and look professional. It's easy to do flyers out there. And then invite everybody in, because you want the people who disagree or are dissenters to change their minds. And so they have to kind of get a fellowship going, and then they will change their mind. So you will see people from far left and far right on this video, as well as the other. And the other one will be a tour. So if we could start with this one.
It's a bad idea to keep spending more than $1 billion of.
Yeah, that's what it media is really, I certainly can.
Oh, yeah, use that.
Use this one. I would say that the media is something that you can easily access. There are all kinds of radio stations you can call into, and all kinds of blogs you can get on. And then you talk to people when you put together your email lists that are willing to send out to their groups. And then you list at the top why it's important, a few sentences, what they could do or why is their issue against it,
Please stop
and the
bleeding.
exact
At a
emails
time
and
when the
addresses.
Oregon Department of Transportation is laying off people, saying they can't maintain the current highway system and have virtually no money for new projects, it's a bad idea to keep spending more than $1 million a month on a project that may never get built.
This group is not saying this is the one or this is the one or this is the one. What we are saying is that ain't the one, and there are
At a time when the Oregon Department of Transportation is laying off people, saying they can't maintain the current highway system and have virtually no money for new projects, it's a bad idea to keep spending more than $1 million a month on a project that may never get built.
this group is not saying this is the one or this is the one or this is the one. What we are saying is that ain't the one, and there are at least 3 better alternatives that need to be looked at before this behemoth puts us into a financial hole we may never get out of.
This is a bridge project to nowhere. We have to stop where we're going. It's a steamroller headed off a cliff.
After 7 years and more than $130 million of spending, the Columbia River Crossing project still lacks a sound financial plan. In fact, the project will cost upwards of $10 billion to the region over the next 30 years when you add in the costs of the construction, the interest, the toll collection, and the other projects that this project will necessitate. And finally, this project's finances are based on wildly inaccurate forecasts of traffic over I-5.
If it's not going to be done well, we're going to end up with more traffic and more pollution in my community, and that's not okay. But the day the CRC would open, we'd still have a bottleneck all up and down southbound I-5 that we wouldn't have solved. We can do better than this, and I hope we stop spending billions before we commit to a multi-billion-dollar mistake.
It won't relieve traffic congestion because, as I mentioned, I-5 is already full. You've only got to listen to the daily traffic reports to realize that the entire Portland freeway network is fairly congested. And it won't provide many jobs because it demolishes almost as many businesses as the jobs required to build a new bridge.
As much as I enjoy using transit, I even enjoy using rail when it works properly. This particular scheme is actually designed to make things worse. Our mayor of Portland has said, well, if there's no rail, there's no project. I'm fine with that. Kill the rail part, and there's no project. Start over, start with something that would actually work.
We're close to getting stuck. My fear is we get to a point of no return and somebody says, oh, we spent so much, we got to press on. But we're not there yet. There's still time for our legislators to have a look at this and look at some of the other alternatives that cost less and we can afford.
And we urge you today to take notice of the preponderance of this evidence and to stop and call a timeout to this project before billions of taxpayer dollars are spent.
So thank you very much, and enjoy the day, and envision something better than what has been proposed. She's going to go into a second video that's actually the same one.
Please stop
But
the
what
bleeding. At At a time when the Oregon Department of Transportation
One that
is
says
laying
they're
off
taking it
people,
on the road,
saying
having
they
to do with the
can't
tour.
maintain the current highway system and have virtually no money for new projects, it's a bad idea.
Okay, this is the, let's stop.
Taking it on the road is the next one on that video. So in putting together these events, we brought our own speakers, we brought our own tables, we brought our own tablecloths to make it look professional, and then put signs in front of it and everything. The more professional you can have it look like, then they have no idea of anything else. This is one of the second tours.
Opponents of the $3.6 billion Columbia River Crossing Light Rail project are still determined to stop it. A group calling itself the Smarter Bridge Committee hosted a tour in Vancouver Saturday to highlight alternatives they say are more affordable for easing congestion on Interstate 5.
This tour is all about educating people, and we're trying to help people to understand that this Columbia River Crossing is a bloated project, that it's one that we can't afford, and that there are far better alternatives that cost less, that serve us better, really.
In its current design, the CRC will replace the historic interstate bridge with 2 larger spans, bring light rail to Vancouver, and reconstruct 6 highway interchanges during 8 years of construction. The Smarter Bridge Committee believes increasing capacity on the bridge will only worsen bottlenecks farther south on I-5 in Portland. They want to preserve the current interstate bridge and instead build supplemental highway, transit, or rail bridges to divert traffic from I-5. Floyd Smith represents the Association of Oregon Rail and Transit Advocates.
We recognize the need to relieve congestion and to move freight and to move people across the river. We just know there are better ways. Nobody's denying from the standpoint of the Smarter Bridge Committee that we need to induce business travel here and passenger travel. It's just how are you most efficiently going to do it? From my perspective, one way to do it is to get people on trains and rail because that's where the efficiencies are.
Event organizer Sharon Nassett would like to see a new highway bypass running from West Vancouver to North Portland and Highway 30 to the west. She feels her third bridge concept, as well as other sensible options, were never fully studied by CRC planners.
A range of alternatives was not thoroughly studied, and that is what would be the best for our economic future. And so we are insisting that now that they have their study complete, that does not mean it should be developed, and other alternatives can be looked at.
CRC Director Nancy Boyd, who attended the tour, was encouraged by the group's enthusiasm, but says many of their ideas were considered and ultimately rejected early in CRC planning.
I do think it's a little misguided in that, I love to see all the energy, but we've gone through that as part of our public process. And now it's time to take what has gone through this public process and refine it into a project that will be built in the next few years.
Other guests came away supportive of the presentations and hope that the work of the Smarter Bridge Committee will continue to spread the word to the public and elected officials that the CRC is not a done deal.
Hopefully we'll get where we the people get to speak, and it's just not decided by someone who thinks they know better.
So really quickly, I'm sorry my presentation's kind of been broke up, but there are definitely some things that can be done, and rather inexpensively, such as these postcards we handed out and some other things. But what I'd like to recommend is, in the end, there is a need for us to change, and I am a Jeffersonian limited government Democrat, the way the process is handled. And what we don't have an advocate in it, and the way I believe is best to change it is to make it similar to an escrow, meaning that the departments that are handling transportation, education, or medicine, and things like that should not be the people who come out to the citizens and do the outreach and handle everything, because they are not at arm's length and they are emotionally involved in it. And by setting up some kind of gap between it, who handles all of the meetings, all of the outreach, all of the open meetings. You can go to it for your FOIA's Open Information, Freedom of Information Act, and you can, and they're the ones that handle it, and then have them have the ability
We took a coach to the Amtrak in downtown Vancouver and saw areas there and ended up going to downtown Portland at the Union Station.
So anyways, I will leave you with the thought that my cards are back there. You can talk with me, but I have quite a list of things that I think that we could change that would not be expensive or different, that would put a process in our hands and have us say whether or not they've checked the box correctly. Thank you.